You are listening to The Thought Leaders Show with the world's cutting-edge, hottest innovators, influencers, and impact makers today. If you are looking for inspiration and motivation, listen in. Welcome to The Thought Leaders Show. Now, here's your host.
Hi, this is Tammy Patzer, and I'm really excited to introduce today's guest, Troy Fullwood. Troy founded Pinnacle Investments in 1996. He has written more than 250 articles on real estate investing, has spoken at more than 60 industry conventions, as well as participated in more than 27 radio talk shows about real estate note investing. And Troy recently spoke at the Business Experts Forum at Harvard Faculty Club, where I was lucky enough to meet him. And I wanted to tell you a little bit more about Troy Fullwood and Pinnacle Investments. Pinnacle Investments is a nationwide principal buyer of first lien performing and non-performing real estate notes. He has assembled a team of professionals whose main focus is to quickly assemble and close each and every transaction. He has done more than 14,000 plus real estate note deals since 1996 through a combination of both single and bulk transactions. Troy built the very first distressed asset fund on Wall Street for non-performing residential mortgages back in early 2007 to capitalize on the market crash. He spent 2 years running the distressed asset fund, which operated and produced a solid 91.15% IRR for himself and the investors who were involved. In late 2008, he sold off his majority interest in the fund to a Wall Street capital group. The core focus of the fund was purchasing first lien NPNs and modifying the loans so that people could stay in their homes. He helped more than 1,700 people stay in their homes during his time at the fund. And Troy has also been named so many different career highlights. He was named Best Mortgage Investor USA by Wealth and Finance International in 2015. 2016, Best of the Best in Finance by Acquisition International. He is a 2017 founding member of the Seller Finance Coalition based in Washington, D.C., and he also built the Note Genesis software in 2017, and he has launched the Thriving Investor Financial website and become a founding investor with Tezos Bank, T-E-Z-O-S, and so much more. And today, I'm so happy that you're here, Troy, because I want you to tell me more about who you help and how you do it. Thank you.
Well, Tamara, thank you so much for having me here today. I truly appreciate it. And I want to thank all the folks out there listening to us as well. Our niche, our avatar for clients are what I would consider first-time home buyers, people who are wanting to put their money to work for themselves, meaning that they understand that the pride of home ownership has a value aspect to their overall net worth, and yet they're not able to qualify through traditional banking means and models, meaning they can't go to the bank to get a loan to buy a house. So what they do is they search out people who are selling their houses through what we call owner financing or seller financing, and then that gives them the opportunity to purchase a home based on much more relaxed terms as far as the rates and the payment terms. And where we the role that we play is that we're the financial arm behind that, meaning that if, Tamara, if you were to sell your house today to somebody and you basically owner financed it, you carried back the mortgage on that house, we would be one that you would call and we would purchase that loan from you or that mortgage from you, whereby giving you the cash that you want and giving the homeowner the house that they desire. And then we make our money over the long term. So we're more of a kind of a set it and forget it investing firm, where we're very focused on passive income when it comes to buying notes. Now, that's on the performing side of our business. We have a part A and a part B to our industry. The part A is what I just described. It's the performing notes, which I call kind of the vanilla investing model of our industry, because it's very simple in regards to the fact that you invest in it, you hire a servicing company to service or collect the payments for you, and then as an investor, the money is deposited into your bank account, and you go about living your life, whatever that lifestyle is. On the part B side of our industry is the non-performing note side of the business. And that became a huge topic of conversation back in 2007 when the market crashed here in the US. And there are a lot of different articles that have been written and a few movies that have been written about that. And I don't want to spend our time here today talking about the high level aspect of it, because what it really did is the high level players, meaning the Wall Street players, they did just fine. They made a lot of money and got out and did just fine. It was the homeowners and the Americans as a whole, the American homeownership population, that really suffered from the crash in the marketplace. And what I learned in going through that, and having grown up with a grandfather that went through the Great Depression of the 1930s, and hearing his experience of that, and then we went through that same type of recession/depression here in the 2007 to 2010 time period. We actually lost more during our recession than they did during their Great Depression, number-wise, in as far as value and overall losses. And the thing that I took away from it was it didn't matter what your education level was. It didn't matter what belief structures you have or what color your skin was or anything of that nature. It affected everybody. It affected everybody. It affected the guys who were worth 10 million were now worth 5 million. The people that were worth 100,000 were now worth 20,000. People that had houses that were worth $500,000, those houses were now worth $250,000, type thing. So it impacted everybody. And so the beautiful thing about that part B is that we had gotten involved in it. We could see the writing on the wall from our industry. Primarily because of the way that the institutional model was working, and they were lending money out at the scale that they were, and we already started to see defaults, but nobody was talking about the defaults. Nobody was talking about first payment defaults. People would go and get loans and then never make a payment on it, that kind of stuff. And it kind of became nouveau in everybody's eyes when the media jumped on board in 07, 08. And started talking about it, much like any other hot topic of conversation that the media gravitates towards. And so they started talking about it, and then everybody became much more educated about it. But the point being is that we saw the writing on the wall in early 07. And so we developed the first distressed asset fund on Wall Street with the sole purpose of buying non-performing loans from banks and institutions, and then ultimately meeting with the homeowners, even in a financial crisis situation, which we were dealing with. We were able to meet with over 1,700 homeowners and help them restructure their mortgages. In other words, I guess the common terminology today would be a mortgage modification. We'd help them modify their mortgage. And we were doing this on a one-on-one basis with these homeowners, communicating with them through mail, through email, through phone calls. We even actually sent people on planes to meet with the homeowners. But our number one goal was to help that homeowner define once, okay, where they were and where they're currently at, and then where they want to go. And the challenge with our industry, meaning the mortgage industry, whether it's the institutional side or the private side, is people go through seasons in life, but we're still expected to make our mortgage payment consistent every single month. I've learned that no matter what your mortgage payment is, if it's $500 a month or $5,000 a month, that's relative to that person or that household. That's a large number for that household, and it's and so what we learned, or what I've learned through the process, is if I can help people look at what they have and then change it so that it has a much more forgiving aspect to it. Meaning, we would buy notes, and they would be maybe the balance on the loan was $100,000, and the house was only worth, say, $60,000. We could do things like forgiveness of debt and put them back into the mortgage, into the house, where they would actually start making payments again. The other thing that we learned during that journey of time was that Americans really don't save a lot of money in general. That's kind of a downside to most Americans. I think we save about like 2 or 3% of our overall income, which is rather small, but they don't have a lot of reserves. And so when things do happen, and they will, like people will lose jobs, or there'll be health issues, or in your case, you just lived through a hurricane. So here in Florida, there was a huge hurricane that came through, Hurricane Irma. And so that's going to change people's lives as a whole. And as Americans, we tend to forget that one piece. So if we can come in and we can put the train back on the tracks for a homeowner, help them move in the right direction that they were going, to get over what I would call a short situational issue and allow them to continue on, and that's a blessing for them. That's a blessing for us. The dollars and the numbers and the returns and all that automatically take care of themselves, because when we buy the non-performing loans, we buy them at huge discounts from banks and institutions. And so any type of return we get is usually above market returns as a whole, which is what attracts the investor side of the business as well. So that kind of help with some understandings of what we do.
Yes, and you're obviously you're talking about how you were able to help all those people stay in their homes, and I went through that. I lost huge money, and I fought with my bank for 5 years, and finally, when the Attorney General stepped in, all of a sudden they cooperated, and I was able to structure my loan, and I've been making payments on it now for since 2012. But it took that long to get them to help me to restructure. So on the investment side of this, you're kind of in a unique business, because I can see where you're in the where you can help a lot of people, and then you can also help people make money through note investing. So how does that part of the business work? If somebody wanted to invest in notes, how can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the art of investing in notes, you have two choices, and you actually have a lot more choices than that. But I'll bring you down to two choices. You have the choice of and I only invest in first lien notes. I don't invest in seconds or thirds or any of those. I'm a first lien note investor, and occasionally we'll invest in commercial stuff, but that's really kind of we don't chase it. In other words, if it comes to us and it makes sense, we'll look at it. So breaking it down into part A, part B, first lien, performing, residential, notes on owner-occupied and non-owner-occupied properties. The typical value of the homes that we invest in is about $137,000 home. They are usually in line with what I would consider to be kind of a first-time home buyer niche as a whole. The reason we invest in that below 150 margin as our sweet spot is primarily because if the economy is growing, you've got new homeowners coming on board. So they're first-time home buyers. If the economy is declining, you've got people selling the bigger houses and moving into smaller houses or less expensive houses. So either way, I'm kind of in that swing spot where no matter what the economy is doing, I'm in a good position. The other great part about that is the banks don't like that spot. They don't like deals that are 130 and less. The reason being is they don't make any money. They can't, point an origination cost or fees barely cover their cost. And so they don't typically go after and they don't market to that side of the business. Now they'll do it if it lands on their desk. They're not going to necessarily turn their nose up at it, but they're not seeking it out as a whole. So that's our matrix as a whole. The great part about it is that fits most investors' matrices as well. People that have money in IRAs, if they've got money in a 401k, if they got money in a self-directed Roth or a checkbook Roth, they can take those monies and they can invest in the note/mortgage or note/deed, depending upon what state it resides in. The great part about this is that when you buy a performing note, you're purchasing the unpaid principal balance on that loan at a discount. Everything we purchase is always at a discount. And the reason there's a discount involved is twofold. One is we have to discount it down to achieve a yield return, meaning we want to achieve anywhere, ideally from 9 to about 12% return on our money. So if that's our goal, a 9 to 12% return, and somebody brings us a note and the interest rate on the note that the homeowner is actually paying is, say, 6%, which is pretty common, 6, 7, 8% for seller finance stuff, then we have to discount it down, and that discount ultimately ends up being somewhere between 15 and 25% of a discount overall. We would then make the offer. If the seller accepted the offer, then we would go into what we call a due diligence period, meaning that we would gather the paperwork from the seller, copies, and we would do a valuation on the property. We would order up a BPO or we'd order up an appraisal and have somebody go look at it for us. We don't physically go and look at them because we're here out of Phoenix, Arizona, but we invest nationwide. We'd also pull a title report on that to make sure that what that person was selling us was actually the case, that it actually is a first lien mortgage on that house. And sometimes they come in the form of a wrap mortgage, meaning that maybe they owe Bank of America $40,000 on the house. They've sold it for $100,000, and when they sell that note for us, one of the requirements will be that at the title company, we'll pay off Bank of America with our proceeds. Kind of a lot like if you were to sell your house today. If you sold it to me, and my lender sent the money to the title company, whoever you owe money, whoever your mortgage holder is, they would get the payoff amount. So we would look at title, make sure that's in place. We'd look at the tax rolls, make sure the taxes are up to date. If they're not, we'd work that out. And then we look at the pay history on the borrower. We'd also pull credit on the borrower to see what kind of a borrower we're getting into business with. Because we're buying a legal binding contract. We can't change anything about that person's mortgage. We can't change the terms. We can't change the rate. We can't change anything. We have to accept it in as-is condition until we buy it, and then we may meet with that homeowner and do a modification. But that homeowner doesn't have to agree to any modifications, especially if they're paying. And they usually don't. It's very rare that they will. So once we buy that, or once we go through our due diligence process, if everything checks out, then what we're looking for when we're doing our due diligence is we're looking for the flaw. We're looking for the issue. And that issue might be a valuation issue. Maybe the value, they sold the house for $100,000, and now the value, maybe they sold the house for $100,000 and they got $10,000 down, and the value of the house is maybe $95,000, or maybe, so there's a negative down payment in there. And we have to figure out if that really is a byproduct of the appraisal, if that's a byproduct of the neighborhood, if something has changed. But it doesn't mean that we won't buy the deal. It just means we want to be acutely aware of those types of things. It might be where the borrower's credit is less than ideal. Less than ideal would be somebody with less than a 575 credit score. And then we'll look at what's on their credit reports. Are these old things? Are these old charge-off accounts? Are these old collections or judgments or whatever might be on there? Or is it really recent? What's really happening here? Usually what we typically find out is that most people, if they have bad credit, it's usually, if you add up all the issues, it's usually less than $1,500. So there's never really anything major, or typically there's very few things that are major. So we'll look at that. Okay, can we live with this? Or is this something that, hey, they just stopped paying everybody 2 months ago, and it's just a matter of time before they're going to stop paying their mortgage as a whole? So we'll look at it from that perspective also. The other thing that we look at is the pay history. Are they making their payments on time? Is it coming in during the grace period? Is it coming in the full amount? Or are they waiting 3 months and then playing catch up and doing those kinds of things? So these are the kinds of things that we're looking for. And when we identify the flaw, then we have to ask ourselves the question, can I live with this? Is this enough to concern me as a whole? It's kind of like buying a car. If you buy a car and there's a cigarette burn on the passenger seat, but everything else in the car works great, do you still buy the car? Type thing. Can I live with that cigarette burn on the passenger seat? And that's a personal question for most people. Same thing with investors. Some investors like to make sure they've got plenty of equity in the property as a fallback position. Some people want to make sure that there's 2 or 3 years worth of payments. We, on the other hand, will buy it after one payment's been made. So, and that's just a byproduct of being in the market space for as long as we have, 21 years, and having a high level of comfort with it. So what we would do is we'd identify a deal, we do our pricing, we do our due diligence, and then we would purchase it. Now we can purchase it with our money off of lines of credit that we have. We can purchase it with another private investor, which we have a lot of private investors that we work with. We can purchase it through our IRA. We can purchase it through our savings account. This is one of the things I love. Now you got me excited, Tamara. Okay? This is where it gets really cool. So I have 4 boys, 16, 13, and 4-year-old twins. And I actually have a daughter, but she's 31. And not that she's any less, but she's like an adult. So the boys are not quite to the college age yet. They're heading to the college age. So years ago, I figured out, well, if I go out and I buy a note and I just put it into a trust, into its own account all by itself, that note, with the beauty of compound interest, the greatest invention of all times is compound interest, that will produce more money for my son's college. So I've done that for each of my boys as a whole. I actually did it for my daughter as well. But I've done it for each of my boys shortly after they were all born. And so I put money aside, I go out and I find a note, not a big one. I find like a little $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 note, and I'll buy it. I'll throw a couple, $20,000 into a trust account for them. And we buy the note, and the payments go into that, and it just grows exponentially until the people either sell the house and pay me off, or they refinance the house and pay me off, or they just out and out pay me off at the end of the day. And I've been able to do that and fund, I've got 4 more colleges, educations to go. I did one, but the 16-year-old, he's a year and a half, I guess, away from high school graduation. And he'll go into college as well. So that money will be there. So in other words, instead of running around when they're age 18, trying to figure out where I'm going to get money to put them through college, I went and invested in a note and allow that to spin off income. And in case anybody wants to know what kind of income you end up collecting on a note, the easiest way to find out is to go to your own mortgage or your own note on your house and do an amortization schedule, and you'll see just how much in interest you'll pay in the first 11 years of that mortgage. And it's pretty eye-opening in most cases for people. It's like, it's shocking. But at the same time, we all want a roof over our head. We want to live in beautiful neighborhoods. We want to be close to good schools and churches and community activities and things of that nature. So we make those investments, and we do that because that's a goal for us. But so that's kind of the aerial view of how we invest in notes as a whole. In the end, what we ultimately end up doing, there's 3 documents that apply to the transfer of that loan or that note. There's the allonge or endorsement of the note. The note in the file is actually the IOU of the file. That's the note. That tells the dollar amount, the interest rate, the payment dates, late fees, and all those things. That's an unrecorded document, and it's always to be kept in a safe place, like a safe or a safety deposit box, something along those lines, so it doesn't get damaged or lost. We'll get an endorsement of that, a lot like if I was to endorse a check over to you, it might say Troy Fullwood, but I would turn it over and I would say, pay to the order of Tamara, and I would sign it and I would give the check to you. It works the same way. That's the way a note works. And then you've got the assignment, and the assignment attaches to the mortgage or deed of trust, depending upon what state it's in. And that assignment attaches to that, and the mortgage/deed of trust is a recorded document in the county in which the property resides. So when I get that, I would then record that assignment in that county so that whoever does title on that property in the future would know, hey, Pinnacle Investments bought this particular loan, and they're the first lien holders of this note on this property. So that kind of lets the public know what we've done. And then we've got what's called the goodbye letter, also known as a hi-bye letter. And that's just a simple letter from the original note holder to the property owner, letting that property owner know that, hey, Troy Fullwood from Pinnacle Investments now owns your note on your house. Please, as of a date in the future, it's 15 days or more, please send your payments to wherever we've instructed them to do that. And if you've been in your house for a while, Tamara, you probably experienced when you first got your loan, that when you got it, there was probably a period of time for about 6 months afterwards where you received letters from first the original lender who said, Tamara, it's been great working with you, but we've sold your loan to ABC Bank. And then you're like, oh, okay. And nothing changed for you as a homeowner except for where you addressed your payment to. And and you would put a stamp on it and send it out. And then you probably got one a couple months after that. Well, Tamara, it's been wonderful doing business with you again, but now you're going to XYZ Bank. And so they sell and they trade loans and mortgages like that all the time. On an institutional level, we do it on a secondary level, what we call private/secondary, also known as street investor level. So pretty cool stuff.
So if I wanted to invest in mortgage notes, would I, as an individual, be able to work with you, or are you at a different level?
No, I love working with people that want to learn the business. We actually have a whole education training for people that want to invest in notes. You can actually go to our Pinnacle-Investments. It's www.pinnacle-investments.com website. And right there, you can download one of our books called Investing in First Trust Deeds. It's free. Just put in your name and your email, and we'll shoot it on over to you. And feel free to read it. If you have any questions, you can always shoot us emails back or phone calls. We will set up 15-minute consultations with people who want to learn the art of investing. And it really has caught fire because we appeal to a segment of the population that they don't want to do the fix and flip. They don't want to do the rental properties. They don't want to have tenants and toilets and things like that. This is much more of a turnkey passive investment, meaning I've got $100,000 in my IRA account that's not really doing anything or much for me, and now I want to move it into something that gives me an 8 or a 9 or a 10 or 11% return, and I don't want to be dealing with it every single day. I want to do it one time. I want to put my money to work, and then I want to go back to living my life and working my career and my job and spending time with my family. So that's the beauty of the performing side. The non-performing side, a little more heavy lifting on that side, but bigger returns too.
So the good news is they can come and ask you and learn about both sides of it. Before I let you go, I hear we're 10 years post 2007, almost into 2018. What is it looking like right now for the marketplace?
Well, that's a great question. I'm very optimistic about the marketplace for several reasons. One is you've got a huge community of investors, what I call street level investors, that have taken up kind of their own flag, their own passion towards their own niches. Some people are big into the tiny house nation stuff, and they're building all these tiny houses and revitalizing communities in like Detroit, Milwaukee, and stuff like that. And then you've got people that are fix and flip people. They love spending every day at Home Depot getting stuff and taking it out to their crews and stuff. And then you've got people that are loving the rental Section 8 markets, and they're putting a lot of houses back on the market that way. And then you've got people that are saying, hey, I want to do the note side of it. And our industry, the performing note side, there's about $1.9 trillion worth of seller financed mortgages, notes and mortgages that have been created currently in the marketplace. Now that's always changing. That fluctuates a little up, a little down. And then on the non-performing note side, there's about $550 billion worth of non-performing mortgages that have yet to even hit the marketplace. Now, it won't all hit the marketplace at once. As a matter of fact, the Fannie Mae just sold off $2.5 billion worth of reperforming loans last week. They're set to close sometime late October, and a big hedge fund bought those. When you break it down, if it's trickling out at say $25 billion a year in product that's filtering into or flowing into the investor marketplace, whether that's Wall Street or whether that's Main Street, it's going to take us a good 15 years to get through the $550 billion worth of first lien non-performing residential homes in America. Now, some of those are vacant homes, some of those are dilapidated homes, some of those are run down, so it's kind of a wide variety. Some of them are high-end homes, multi-million-dollar homes in prestigious neighborhoods. Some of them are the average American home as well. The great part about that is there's still tons of opportunity to go and help people. There's still tons of opportunity to go out there and buy deals and to put your money to work. Whether you want more of the passive or you want to do a little heavy lifting and get a little bit better return. So me personally, I see nothing but amazing opportunities for the next 10 plus years. The sad part about lending and home ownership is that even in a great economy, people fall behind on their mortgages due to situational issues. Job loss, divorce, things like that are pretty common still. And so we always have to kind of keep that in mind as well. There's always going to be that about 1.5% to 2.5% default rate in the institutional paper. So that's always going to trickle down it. Instead of a flowing hose, it might be a drip or like a stream or a trickle type thing. But so to answer your question in simplified terms, I'm excited about the next 10 years. I'm actually very
well. That's good to know that the next 10 years we're still looking pretty good. So thanks so much, Troy. So it's Pinnacle-Investments.com.
Yes.
And you can go get educated. That's what I really love about everything that you do, Troy, is that you provide this really solid education so that people who are interested in learning about investing in notes, they can do that. And then you've proven to me that you're just one big fount of information. And I'm thinking I need to tell my dad about this because my dad, he likes to invest in different things and he likes to become educated first. And so with your website and all the information you have, he can get that education. And then, like you said, you do the 15-minute consultation so that somebody could ask you any questions and about how to get started and everything. Yeah. So I'm really excited. And thank you so much for sharing all the information and for having that great, optimistic attitude about homes and the future, because I think everybody, they're all curious about that because, it's been about 10 years and everybody's kind of wondering, what's going on in that market. And since you're in it every day, you have a better view than anyone I personally know. Yeah. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for having me here. It's been an honor. It's been a pleasure. You're amazing as an interviewer and as a human being. It was such a great opportunity to meet you at Harvard. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to go to our website, grab the free ebook. I think it's an easy read, 70, 80 pages, but it gives a great overview in the opportunities that the industry has available for you. So, but thank you so much for having me here today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Troy. This is Tammy Patzer. Go make it a beautiful day.
You've been listening to the Thought Leaders Show. To get all past shows and to get all future shows, go to thoughtleadersshow.com.